Hello and welcome back to Arakoola Kard Art, my YouTube channel. My name is Debbie Watts. Arakoola is unusual. Just briefly, it translates into English as in front. It's Aboriginal. My logo is a boomerang, and that just signifies a repeat. It comes back. My clients come back for their bespoke, handmade designed greetings cards, wedding stationery and party media. I also run my own workshops, which are monthly, and it's a full day of crafting with all tools and materials provided, and hopefully you will take home a few new skills. I'm on the design team for two UK-based companies. One is Honeydew Crafts, and they are based in Bury St Edmunds, and the other is Stamp Addicts, and they are based in Kempston in Bedfordshire. I hope you enjoy this video, and I'm going to take you step by step through the different stages to make a wonderful card. This evening, this is the card we will make. It's along the lines of a grunge type card, very arty. Very simple card. We are going to be using stamps, some blending inks, Distress inks. Going to be creating some flowers, stamp, colouring with inks, Distress inks, fussy cutting, and adding a few details. So you'll need some sentiments. I've got a range this evening. Dream, imagine, believe, wish and art. They can of course be any sentiment. I've got a variety selection of stamps. This card has no particular design or pattern, so we are just going to create the images as we work on our project. I've got some grunge type stamps, rubber mounted, as well as polymer, and just some detailed script. It's not one that you can understand, it's not one that you're going to need to read, but it just adds some detail. The main colours for inks we're going to use today are a range of greys. We've got some London Fog, which is often a go-to ink rather than black. We've got a couple of colours of Distress inks. These are the colours I'm going to be making to create the flowers. So one of my all-time favourites, picked raspberry. And for the centre I just want to add a contrasting colour, and I'm going to use wild honey. I've got some blending sponges. These are cheap makeup sponges. You can of course buy the correct blending tools, but I find these equally as useful, and obviously very cheap. We've got some washi tape. This is patterned sticky tape. And of course you will need some acrylic blocks. I've got a variety of sizes and shapes. Some of the acrylic blocks actually come with a grid. You may be able to see these if I place these on the black card. So these are a grid, and these are very useful for when you want to line up those word sentiments or get the words just in a straight line. It's very easy not to do that from the naked eye, so again I use the lined blocks. The other blocks I have, as you can see, clear, and the grid lines. So to make today's card you'll need a number of materials. This is an 18 by 18 centimetre white scorecard, 300 GSM. You will need a 17 by 17 centimetre matte black card, and a layer is a 16 by 16 centimetre. So once you matte and layer these, the black will actually create a wonderful frame when you start laying it up and fixing it to your white scorecard. So fixing your stamps to your acrylic blocks, we just want to use a couple of shades of the grey to load up the ink onto the stamp. So tap away with your ink pad to transfer the ink to your stamp. And in no particular design or pattern, I'm going to just randomly stamp my images using the various greys to my piece of work. You can do second generation stamping where I don't need to reload my stamp with my ink. I can just restamp, apply some pressure, and as you can see I will get a second image with a slightly lighter shade of the ink. Just a very useful way of using the ink. So again, always take your ink pad to your stamp. Apply as much or as little ink as you wish, and just create some stamping. The image doesn't always have to be directly onto your card. You can see that I've stamped off card, and you just really want to create some interesting designs. So again, we're not going to be completely and strictly uniformed with how we position our stamps. We're just going to be creative. When you've finished using your ink pad, always pop the lid on. One reason, not to dry the ink pad out, but the second reason is so you don't get inky and mucky arms and elbows. Once you're finished with your stamp, just take a wet tissue, take off the remainder of the ink. Purely and simply, if you look after your stamps, then your stamps will last you for many years to come. I dry mine with a simple towel. You can obviously use a kitchen paper towel, but again, I just use a towel, pop it in the wash and use it time and time again. With the kitchen paper, obviously, you know, once you use it, once it's contaminated with the ink, you have to throw it away. So continue to build up your base card with your different stamps. You can create some very interesting work and designs, and again you can overstamp just to fill in some gaps. I'm not going to be strictly uniform about where I put my images. I just really want to build up. And again, I'm not all stamping the same image with the same ink colour. I'm going to just add some variation. As you can see, it's interesting that you can use a variety of ink colours. So it's just building up your work with the various images. A reminder, always add the ink to your stamp. And you get a much clearer transfer of your ink to your card. Forget that we can do second generation stamping, and quite often we can actually do third generation stamping. So this allows you to quickly fill up your paper without having to continuously go back to your ink. But load up the image with the amount of ink you want and stamp. I want to create quite a strong image for this bottom corner, so I'm just going to add a bit more ink just to make it stand out a little. You may be able to see where you're stamping off card that you leave some ink onto your work surface, so again, just keep it nice and clean, and then you're not at risk of contaminating your work with unwanted ink. A reminder, always pop the lid on to your ink pens. Some of the very smaller stamps, these are rubber mounted. Rather than try to find a minuscule acrylic block, I can actually place the stamp image down onto the ink pad and just position and give light pressure with my finger. Again, just randomly creating images over my work. So once you're happy and you're starting to build up your images, it's time to stop when you feel it necessary to stop, really. There's no right and wrong. So once you are happy with your background design, I'm going to just add a bit of distress ink around the edges. And I'm taking one of the grey inks and a sponge, and just lightly dab the ink pad and just add in small circular motions some ink to distress the borders. Remember, the tip is you can add the ink, but you can't take it away. So you may want to go around the edge a couple of times until you're happy with the intensity of the ink that you're adding. This is just an option, but I just think it finishes off the edge quite nicely, and just allows everything to start to blend together. So work in small circular movements, and you can gradually see the edges softening as you add the ink. So it starts to close the images that you've stamped and draws focus to the detail. Every time you look at the card, you're going to spot something different, something new, something more interesting. You can keep this as plain and simple as you like, or as detailed and busy as you like. There's no right and wrong. You may hear some peculiar noises in the background. That is my crafting buddy. His name is Buddy, and he's my Amazon yellow-crowned parrot. He likes a lot of me time, and I find the craft room is ideal to allow me to associate with Buddy. He has all the free time, and more important with me, as to just being kept in a cage. He may show a guest appearance. He is quite shy. He may start whistling and singing. I promise it's not me. So, as you can see, I've blended all of the edges, adding the ink, and just creating some softness to our stamped images. Before the next stage of my card, I want to add some of the words, and I'm going to be using dream, wish, and art today. So position them on your acrylic block. A reminder, some of the blocks you can buy have got the grid lines, and it allows you to make sure that your word stamp or sentiment is lined up straight onto your acrylic block. What I want to do is create a faded image of the word. So I'm going to be stamping it in two colours. So I'm going to apply the lighter colour all over the stamp. So the ink pad goes to your stamp. Give it a good coating. And then what I'm going to do with a darker colour is just stamp half, the bottom half of the word. So just move along and stamp the bottom of the word. As you can see, it's picked up the ink, the darker ink on the bottom of the word. You can of course stamp it all one colour, but I just like to give it a blend. As you've blended your base card, you just might want to add a bit more. I'll do a faded word, and I'll do a solid word in the other two colours in a second. So taking your flowers, not fixing them to your card just yet, decide where you actually want to position your flowers on your card, because obviously the last thing you want to do is stamp the word onto your card and then put a flower over the top. So it's just about arranging the final look of your card at this stage, but not fixing to the card. So once you're happy with where you want your flowers to be, take an image in your mind of where those flowers are going to be. Just put them to one side and then you can stamp your word. So give this some firm, even pressure. These are rubber mounted stamps that I'm using, so they tend to be more solid when you're stamping with them, and they don't tend to splurge the image or blur the image. So as you can see here, you've got, with the two-tone, you've got the darker colour at the bottom of the word, and it blends up to a lighter tone at the top of the word. So just taking each word, position onto your acrylic block. Again, if you wish, just put your flowers back onto your card to just see where you want the next word to be. So I'm going to use a smaller word first, and today I've chosen art. I'm going to do this in one solid colour, the darker colour. So just load up your stamp word with your ink pad. Make sure it's got some good coating. I think I'm going to put this directly under the dream. As you can see, using the single ink, you get a more even tone, a more solid outcome of your stamp. So it's coming together quite nicely, and you can see this is just some plain, simple stamping with a couple of tones of grey ink, and it's amazing what you can achieve. Final word that I want to put onto the card, I just want to add a bit of colour. I know we're going to be placing the flowers to add the colour, but I just want one of the words to stand out. And for me, that's going to be wish. So I'm going to take the oxide inks, Wild Honey, and half stamp the word at the top with one colour. I'm going to do the top half in the Wild Honey. So you can see that I've loaded the top half of the word with my Wild Honey. And I'm just going to do the same with my picked raspberry along the bottom of the word. You may want to do a little bit of practice at this until you get the right blend, the right mix for your colours. But just make sure that the whole of the word has got some ink. And in the centre you can see you've actually started to create a new colour where the two colours are going to blend. If you do have a bit of colour onto your stamp, just take a wet tissue and wipe it off. And the reason why we do that before stamping to your project is just so that sometimes if you press a little bit too hard, that smudge can transfer onto your project. And at this stage, you don't really want to ruin all your hard and fabulous work. So again, place the flowers back on the card and just decide where you want it. So I've got some detail here. So I think in this bottom corner, I'm going to put my wish. So let's make that wish. So light, firm, even pressure. Fingers crossed, and there you go. So it's not actually overpowering the card, it's just adding some very fine detail. I think that's looking really, really good. To make your flowers, take a piece of your 216 GSM paper. You need a flower stamp with 3 separate sizes, large, medium, small, your acrylic block, and the 2 colours that I've chosen earlier. So take your large stamp, place onto the block, and stamp with VersaFine. So take the ink pad to the stamp and lightly tap, making sure you've got a good even coverage. With light, firm and even pressure, stamp onto your card. What we're going to be using for this is 1 large, 2 medium and 2 small. So just quickly change on your block, and depending on the size of your block you can actually put 2 stamps onto the same block. So again, ink up your stamp, making sure you've got a good even coverage. Where you've got stamps side by side, just make sure that there is a gap between so you can actually catch the edge of the stamp with ink. Quite often if you get them too close, the ink doesn't transfer onto the stamp and you end up with patches. So just lightly tap all over, making again sure that you've got good even coverage. So press a light pressure over this stamp and lift. And this image of the stamp is actually quite a detailed, it's a really nice detailed stamp. So we just need another medium and another small. And just remember the firm, even pressure. And there we go. Just to finish this off, what I would do before adding my colour is just take a heat gun over them, and that just really sets the VersaFine ink. And now we're ready for colouring. So to colour them, take your inks, picked raspberry and wild honey. I'm going to first of all add the pink detail to the outer edge of the flower on each of them, and then I'm going to put a contrast of the wild honey into the centre of the flower. Just gives it a bit more definition. So gently take your sponge to your ink pad. So that I don't over ink my flower, what I want to do is gradually add the colour, is I just dab my crafting service to take some of the excess ink off. Don't worry, we're not going to waste that. We will be taking that off to add to our project later. So in circular motions, just build up the colour of your flower. And I tend to leave the middle so that I can add the alternate colour. You can make the flower as intense as you like. So again, just take more colour, dab the excess off, and repeat that with all 5 of the images. Don't forget, what you've put on your mat or your craft service you can use, so nothing's wasted. So small circular motions, and as you become more confident and experienced with this, the process is actually quite quick. I'll sit of an evening making a batch of flowers, so I'll stamp, I'll colour, and I'll fussy cut, and then that gives me some ready to go flowers whenever I need them. It's also just quite relaxing to just sit there of an evening, not have a particular craft project in mind, but just be creative. So as you can see, I'm building up the intensity to each of the flowers, and no two are the same. So once you've done that, lid on, and just take away any contamination ink that you have from your crafting area. With the next colour, take a small bit of the ink, dab off the excess, and to the centre of the flower, what I'm doing, rather than circular motion, I'm just lightly dabbing the centre just to build up the colour. I'm not going to put the same amount of ink on each stamp, but as you can see, it's just giving it some detail. Don't forget to reload your ink pad with your sponge. There you go. And there's your flowers. Things to one side. Personally, I just feel it easy to individually rough cut around each of these stamped images, because the process we're now going to do to cut each individual flower stamp is fussy cut. So what we want to do is cut as close to the outline as you can. And don't forget to nip into the petal if you've got the petals touching each other. This will just allow you some extra room for curling later in the process. I find it easy to hold the scissors fairly stable and turn the card, and it allows you to get more precise on cutting the outline. So as you can see, my scissors hardly move, and I'm turning the card to actually cut out the petal. As you get more confident with this, you'll actually become quite quick. So nipping into the flower join where the petals are, you're creating some separation. So 1 down, 4 to go. Once you've fussy cut all the flowers, just take your heat gun, because you've used the oxide inks, to set the colour. So a quick blast of each flower to just set. And this just stops some of the colour contamination and removal onto your fingers as you're making the flower. Careful not to burn your fingers, these craft guns get really, really hot. You can of course use a tool to hold your flower in place. So to curl the flower, what I do is I use this kebab stick. It's a wooden one, no more than that. There are curling tools and flower making tools that you can buy, but I just feel you can get the similar result and the same result. You don't want to add too much curl, so flip your flower over and place the petal between your finger and your thumb. Add the kebab stick onto the back, and what you need to do is just gently grip and curl each of the petals. Don't take them too far down, because you're just doing this to add a bit of definition and height to your flower. But they don't look like much at the moment, but once you actually construct your flower, it will make all the difference. So do this to each of your flower petals, and then we can make and construct the flowers. Now we're going to be doing the construction of your card. So with each of your layers, take the black mat and add to the back of the card the white double-sided sticky tape to each of the 4 edges. So this you're actually going to start layering up, creating your white frame from your base card. Peel off the backing papers and then affix the black layer to your white card. Do the same with your project card, and what you will then do is you will construct your card as such. And as you can see, it's really now starting to come together. You can see the black outline, the black frame of the matte card against your distress edged project. So you can see it drawing together, and I think it looks fabulous standing out on the white base card. Actually see some of the finer detail. So you can see the colour of your two-tone, a very subtle wish. You can see the different colour greys with your ink and images. So it's not all one solid colour. So what I did for my flowers is just add a small gem into the centre of them. No card is card without a bit of bling, that's what I say. So to the back of your card, the back of your flower, sorry, just add some glue and place it into your final position on your card. And do the same with the second flower. You might need to set that to dry for a minute or so. Just make sure where you're positioning this that you're not covering any of your words. A firm push. A couple of minutes drying time. Remember, cap on the glue. And without too much experience, without too many different types of products, you have now created this wonderful, very simple card that if anybody was to receive that, I think you would agree, they would be, oh wow, that is just so stunning. And more importantly, it's actually been made by you. So thank you for watching today. I hope you've learnt a couple of top tips from me. Please hit the like button, subscribe, feel free to make any comments, and from your feedback, if there is anything that you would like to see me to do in the future, then please put a message. So thank you for watching. My name is Debbie, and goodbye from Arakoola Kard Art. Happy crafting.